In reviewing Super Street Fighter 4, I was tempted to just change the title of my regular Street Fighter 4 review and see if you guys would get the joke. Everything I said in that review is applicable here, and Capcom has made zero effort to change the original formula, from the geriatrically slow character movement to the preposterous balance problems, and of course the game's bizarre proclivity towards grapplers and characters with easy launch moves. It's basically Street Fighter 4 Part 2 Electric Boogaloo. Street Fighter 4 was a half-assed attempt to cash in on the Street Fighter brand, and Super Street Fighter 4 is a half-assed cash-in off a half-assed cash-in. It's clear at this point that Capcom is interested in nothing but the bottom line. Their dyed-in-the-dung tourney fanboys would pretty much follow the franchise off a cliff at this point, which sounds like a plan as far as I'm concerned. I fully intend to set up bleachers and sell concessions for $15 a pop, while these a-holes plunge headlong into creative oblivion. But the question you're likely asking yourself is, were any of Razorfist's complaints regarding the original game addressed? So let's get scientific here and itemize what I hated about the original and whether or not it's been addressed. My main complaint is and has always been that the Street Fighter series has always been about speed and precision, while Street Fighter 4 seemed to take place on the moon and dumb down the button inputs for the 12-year-old kiddies on PSN and Xbox Live. In other words, Capcom pulled the franchise in the exact opposite direction from the relatively successful Alpha series, which as a huge fan of Alpha 3 chaps my ass to no end. So is the game any faster? Well, despite Capcom's platitudes to the contrary prior to the game's release, it still moves like a half-frozen arthritic sloth. I did actually notice some slight engine acceleration, but too little too late doesn't quite do the situation justice. When tourney-fag fanboys say, but it's been slightly sped up, it's like if a jet pilot crashed headlong into a day school for the deaf while carrying a 12-megaton thermonuclear warhead. But then some asshole pipes up and says, but the landing gears still work. I mean, who fucking cares? The rest of the game's a laughably unbalanced back-alley abortion performed by a medieval dentist with a rusty pair of pinking shears. And while we're on the subject of balance already, I think we should have a moment of silence for all of Super Street Fighter 4's wasted potential as we reflect on exactly what, or rather who, is wrong with this game. Are you done? Because I'd really like to say from the bottom of my heart that if this syphilitic purple-haired ponce were to be summarily violated by a gaggle of frothing HIV-positive rhinoceri, by fucking rhinos, while a pack of jackals plays jump rope with her small intestine, she would still have gotten more of a fair shake than any Street Fighter player that gets hit with what has to be the most broken, unbalanced fighting move since the goddamn Falcon Punch. Jesus Christ himself could descend from heaven and ninja kick you in the sack, and it would still have less priority than this horrible cunt's backflip kick. That is, if Jesus isn't too terrified to descend from heaven due to a dawn shrieking like a pterodactyl getting its taint pierced. Seriously, Capcom? Is this move your fucked up idea of balanced? I mean, when I saw the first video leaked from Korea featuring gameplay of this horrible cunt, I called it right then and there. Even in the earliest builds of this game, we could all tell this move needs to be fucking nerfed. But did they listen to the fans? Hell no. And why should they? After all, the fans only pay their fucking salaries. It's only the fans who are the reason Yoshinori Ono powders his armpits with gold dust and wipes his ass with diamonds. But there's another thing that grinds my gears with regard to Super Street Fighter 4. You remember in early 2009 when some African groups complained in protest that depictions of black people in Resident Evil 5 were racist, which Capcom promptly denied, but not before turning all the fucking zombies in the game into grass-skirt-wearing, spear-throwing tribesmen furiously clicking their tongues at Chris and Sheva? Now, to be fair, Japan as a country has a xenophobic streak that spans the length of their coastline, and in fairness, there are still agrarian tribes in the countrysides of Africa that look somewhat like that. But using that as an excuse is like saying, yeah, I shot that police officer in the brain, but he had something on his face. Which is why when a Native American character like T-Hawk does a cyclone on his opponent, sits on his back, holds up his right hand and says, how? It's not quirky Japanese culture clash, it's fucking racism, guys. If they'd put that in a Street Fighter film, every Native American on the planet would pick at the movie, and for good reason. How is this not a controversy, but a sex minigame that had been programmed out of Grand Theft Auto 3 and could only be activated by hacking the game is somehow offensive. It's like Capcom could have a black-faced vaudevillian tap dancing on a diagram of the AIDS virus in Street Fighter 4, and you motherfuckers would still say, oh, that Capcom, so quirky. You mean to tell me that GameFailers.com can ban anyone for using the word Mexican, but DJ can bust out a pair of maracas after every battle, and even with his big, stereotypical, toothy grin, it's not considered racist? I certainly haven't noticed GameTrailers.com refusing to host Super Street Fighter IV footage on their website, so one really has to wonder how committed they truly are to their silly, politically correct dogma. The game is also extremely sparse when it comes to game modes. Not only were features not added to the game, unless you count car punching and barrel smashing minigames, which were present in a 20-year-old game like Street Fighter II is new, they actually seem to have taken some time and care in removing the entire survival mode from the game, which is basically an extended middle finger to me, as survival was just about the only gameplay mode in the original Street Fighter IV that I could play for more than 5 seconds without the overpowering urge to mail sarin gas to Capcom of Japan HQ. Online quarter matches seem like a sweet addition to the game's online component until you're confronted with a chest-slapping reality that every shrieking 10-year-old on Xbox Live and PSN is inexplicably drawn to this game. Maybe it's because the graphics look like if Legend of Zelda Wind Waker and Pokemon had fucked, but then given birth to such a simpering, obnoxious pussy that they force-fed him anabolic steroids until he was 27. Either way, tread lightly in the online setting, as the game's audience seemed to fall into one of two categories: the aforementioned 10-year-olds who somehow managed to override the 360's parental controls, and sideways baseball hat-bedecked UFC-loving John Cena wannabes that run their slack-jaw ragged talking up their own skills, only to break out Akuma and see their last shred of frat guy masculinity evaporate before the announcer can even say perfect. Needless to say, I plugged my headset in, turned the volume all the way down, and set the headphones on the bed. I don't recommend you do the same, however, as that would preclude me from recommending that you light this vacuous, cell-shaded shit stain ablaze, preferably with a fireball emitted from your own ass, before hurling it as far in the direction of Osaka, Japan as you possibly can. I'm Razor Fist. God fucking speed.